Hey guys, welcome back. Today's video is going to be all about dupes that I found that I feel like nobody talks about, and I absolutely love dupes. I think it's the best feeling ever to find an awesome product that works just as well as its high-end counterpart and saves you a ton of money in the process. So I have some skincare ones and some makeup, so without further ado, let's get started. So first let's do some skincare dupes, and you've probably heard me talk about this one on my channel quite a few times already, so it's not going to be too much of a surprise. This is the Yes to Tomatoes 2-in-1 Scrub and Cleanser Stick. It's pretty much an exact dupe for the Tarte Friction Stick. So the Yes to is $9.99 for 2.5 ounces, and the Tarte is $22 for 1 ounce. So these don't have the same ingredients necessarily, but they work the same. They both contain charcoal and they both have a really fine exfoliant, so they feel the same going on your skin. I don't notice a whole lot of difference using either one. I think they both get my skin really smooth and also seem to brighten up a little bit and sort of decongest my pores with the charcoal. So these are so similar. I wouldn't even bother getting the Tarte one because the Yes to is so awesome. The next dupe is one that you've probably heard about if you watch some of my earlier videos. It's the e.l.f. Massaging Facial Cleanser versus the Foreo Luna. The e.l.f. is $20 and the Luna is $139, and after using both, I can honestly say that they pretty much do the same thing. They both vibrate to sort of loosen the dirt and debris in your skin, and you just use it with your cleanser, and I think that they work exactly the same. The only difference is, and why I actually like the e.l.f. one a little bit better, is the shape, because the e.l.f. one is pointed, so it really helps you get into those smaller areas like around your nose, underneath your eyes, and the Luna is just kind of bigger and more clumsy, so I actually prefer the e.l.f. one in this case. I think there's no point in spending your money on this one when you can get pretty much the same thing for 20 bucks. And the last skincare dupe that I have is the Kosar X Galactomyces 95 Tone Balancing Essence versus the SK2 Facial Treatment Essence. Now, the Kosar X 3.38 ounce size is $21, while the SK2 5.4 ounce is $179, and even the mini size of the SK2, which is 2.5 ounces, is $99. So there's a humongous price difference here, but the ingredients are basically the same. Actually, again, I prefer the Kosar X. I think that it has a few more beneficial ingredients added into it that the SK2 doesn't have. So if you don't know the story of SK2 really quickly, the scientists that work for them basically went to a sake factory, and they noticed that the workers that had their hands in the sake all the time, their hands looked way younger than their faces. So basically they figured out that it was the fermented ingredients in the sake that were doing that. So the Galactomyces ferment filtrate is the #1 main ingredient in both of these essences, and in the Kosar X, it's 95% of the formula is that ingredient. I don't know what the percentage is in the SK2, but I'm guessing it's very similar since 95% is almost the whole thing. But in addition to that, the Kosar X also includes niacinamide, which helps to refine your pores, as well as hyaluronic acid. And the SK2 has parabens and the Kosar X does not. So I think that this is actually a superior formula, and it's $21 as opposed to $100 or $179. So I would highly recommend this one. It just helps to really brighten up your skin, and I have noticed a difference since using it. I'll talk more about this when I do my skincare video coming up, but I love this stuff so much and definitely recommend it. So moving on to makeup dupes, I have a good concealer one for you guys, especially if you have drier under eyes like I do. This is the Neutrogena Hydro Boost Concealer versus the Benefit Boing Hydrating. It used to be called Fake Up, which is the one that I still have. They changed the packaging and the name, but it's still the same thing. And these are both 0.12 ounces. The Neutrogena is $12.99 and the Benefit is $20. These are stick concealers, but inside each one is a hydrating core, so it keeps them from looking dry or cakey on your skin. And I actually prefer the Neutrogena one because it's a little bit less greasy. I think the Benefit, while it doesn't cake under my eyes and it helps my under eye area look hydrated, I think it can get just a little bit greasy and slide around, and I can sometimes feel it on my skin. It never completely dries down, but the Neutrogena one is just a little bit lighter and not quite as greasy, so I do like the feeling of this more, but it still makes my under eyes look very hydrated, and it doesn't settle into my lines, which I really love. So this one is a great dupe for the benefit. Then I also have a couple of blush dupes for you guys. The first one is the Flower Beauty Flower Pots in the shade Warm Hibiscus versus the NARS Orgasm, and this is basically a cult classic, but I think that the Flower Beauty one is so similar. The flower one is $9.99 for 0.21 ounces, and the NARS is $30 for 0.16. So you're actually getting more in the flower than you are the NARS, but I think they are both the same, like warm peachy pink with a little bit of gold shimmer. The formulas are both beautiful, but why get the NARS one if the flower one is pretty much the same thing? Another great blush dupe that I found is the Wet n Wild Color Icon in the shade Apricot in the middle versus the Too Faced Papa Don't Peach blush. Now the Wet n Wild one is $2.99 for 0.21 ounces, while the Papa Don't Peach is $30 for 0.32 ounces. But I think that these are so similar. Again, they're both this really pretty light peachy tone with a little bit of shimmer to it. I can't really tell the difference between them at all when they're on my cheeks. Actually, I'm wearing them on my cheeks today. I have the Wet n Wild on one side and the Too Faced on the other, and they look exactly the same. And then the last blush dupe that I have is the Milani Rose Blush in the shade Romantic Rose versus Tarte's Exposed. The Milani is $6.99 for 0.6 ounces, and the Tarte is $29 for 0.2 ounces. So you definitely get more with the Milani, and it's a lot cheaper. I think the formulas are just a little bit different on these. The Milani one feels a little bit more buttery, while the Tarte one is a little bit drier. But overall, the color is pretty much the same. I would say it's like a really pinky nude with a little bit of plum to it. But once they're on your cheeks, I don't think you notice a difference at all. I think they pretty much look exactly the same. And next up, I have some highlighter dupes. So this is the Too Faced Love Light highlighter in the shade Ray of Light versus the Wet n Wild Mega Glow highlighting powder in Precious Petals. So the Too Faced is $30 for 0.32 ounces, while the Wet n Wild is $4.99 for 0.19 ounces. So you do get a little bit more in the Too Faced version, but not enough to make up the cost, since you're spending 5 times more on this one than you are on the Wet n Wild. So next up is also another highlighter dupe, which you probably saw if you watched my Shop My Stash video last week. This is the COL-LAB The Filter Highlighting Liquid in the shade Spark My Interest versus Marc Jacobs Coconut Dewdrops. So the COL-LAB is $14.99 for 1 fluid ounce, and the Marc Jacobs Dewdrops is $44 for 0.8 fluid ounce. So you are getting a little bit more with the COL-LAB for a lot less money, and I feel like they look exactly the same. The shade is super close. Once it's on your face, you can't even tell the difference, and I think that the formula is so similar. They both feel really lightweight. They are both super smooth with no chunky glitter, anything like that. You can use them both as a primer, you can mix them in with your foundation, and you can also just dab a little bit on the tops of your cheekbones and just use them as a liquid highlighter. So I think these are super similar, but again, way less money right here. I definitely recommend picking this one up. So this next dupe is a lipstick dupe, and this is actually one that I just picked up recently. It's the Too Faced Natural Nudes lipstick in the shade Birthday Suit, and I found another one in my collection that is a perfect color match, and it's the Found Satin Lip Cream in the shade Ginger. The Too Faced is $22 for 0.12 ounces, and the Found is $7.88 for 0.1 ounce. So they're very similar in size, and I think the color is almost identical. I found that the Too Faced formula is slightly more hydrating than the Found, but it doesn't dry out my lips at all. So I'm actually wearing the Found one today, and I love this color so much. So I was really happy to find a dupe. I know a lot of you guys on Instagram were asking me about this one and whether I like the color, and I definitely do love it, but I found something in my collection I already had that is pretty much exactly the same thing. So I have 2 palette dupes for you guys today, and there are so many eyeshadow palette dupes right now with Shop Hush. If you're not familiar with them, they have just a ton of blatant copies of high-end palettes. But these 2 that I'm going to show you today aren't quite as obvious as those dupes are. These are a little bit more just something that I discovered as I was playing with different palettes. So the first one is the NARS Narcissist Wanted palette versus the Beauty Creations Tease Me palette. These are so similar. You do get more shades in the Tease Me palette. That one is $16 for 18 shades, and the NARS palette is $59 for 12 shades. But when I swatched these side by side, I was totally blown away by how similar they are. And once you put them on your eyes, you really cannot tell the difference. I actually did both of my eyes today. I used the Beauty Creations on this side and the NARS on this side, and the eye look came out pretty much exactly the same. I do think that the NARS formula is slightly better than the Beauty Creations. This one is just a little bit more powdery. This one has slightly more pigment to it, but this is by no means a bad palette, and I think it's easy to work with. You just have to build up the shades a little bit more than you would with this one. But you know, some people actually like a more blendable palette as well, because it's always easier to build up a color than to try to take it away if it's really pigmented. So if you've been wanting this NARS palette, maybe just grab this one, because I think you can get super similar looks out of it. And then my last dupe is another eyeshadow palette. This is the Colourpop Double Entendre versus the Tartelette Toasted palette. The Toasted palette is $46 for 0.636 ounces, while the Colourpop is $16 for 1.02 ounces. So you're actually getting more with the Colourpop, the same amount of shades. They both have 12 shades, but I could not believe when I swatched these side by side how similar they really are. And the Colourpop formula is fantastic. If you have not tried their palettes yet, I highly recommend them. They are just as good as high end. They blend as well. They're super pigmented. I'm so impressed with Colourpop's eyeshadows. They've become pretty much my favorite affordable eyeshadow palettes. They're amazing. So if you don't have the Toasted in your collection yet, I highly recommend just picking up this one instead. All right guys, that does it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I would also love to hear about your favorite dupes in the comments below. I always love chatting with you guys. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.